eso y gracias a la misericordia. This is Sancista Brujo Luis, and I want to do a video today because I realized that I started this channel right here in 2011, and I didn't really record a video until 2 years afterwards, because at that time I was writing a blog and I was writing articles and all that, so I just never had the time to focus on doing a video. So then I just realized that I am just coming to the 4th year anniversary of me with the videos on my YouTube channel, and in the 4 years of me documenting my journey, my spiritual journey, I have gained almost 6,000 followers, and I just want to say I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. So I was thinking, what can I do? What kind of a video can I do to commemorate? Is that the word? Commemorate the anniversary of the channel. So I said, well, why don't I do a video on personal paranormal stories? And let me tell you, I can feel, if you see my videos, sometimes I sneak a couple stories in there, but if I was to collect all my stories, I could make an autobiography. Maybe that's something that I will do in the future. But I'm going to say a couple stories, and I hope you enjoy them. These are personal stories that happened to me. There's some stories that are more spiritual and some that are more mundane. And I'm just going to, just say whatever random story comes to my mind, and I hope you like them. If you do, please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed. Please leave a comment down below, and also share your own personal paranormal or spiritual stories in the comments down below. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this intro. I'm gonna stop now and just get into the stories, because I'm known for me gusta hablar mucho. So anyways, I'm just going to start the stories, and I hope you do enjoy this. Okay, so the first story that I'm going to tell you today is titled La Sesión. And La Sesión, I do a lot of sesiones. If you know, I'm a sancista, but I'm also an espiritista. I work in the world del espiritismo, Puerto Rican espiritismo. And in espiritismo, we work la causa, but we also do sesiones, veladas, y misas espirituales. A sesión is a spiritual seance where we have, everything's off, all the lights are off, and we have one candle, and all the mediums sit around a table, and we place our hands pretty much like this, and we pray for protection, and we do all that. So anyways, a couple years ago, I was invited to be la media unidad, the presiding medium over a sesión in a santero's house. Now, I'm not going to name the santero, but he resides in Massachusetts, and he's Cuban. And so he asked me if I could be el presidente de la mesa for this sesión, and I said sure. And I asked him what it was for, and of course he told me what it was for. So anyways, it was going to be 5 people. It was going to be me, this Cuban santero, and I think there were 3 other people. I think it was a Cuban lady and another Puerto Rican couple, and then the Cuban santero. So we had gone to this gentleman's house, and beautiful house. It's in Boston. It was a beautiful house, and I remember there was a fireplace. Is that what? Yeah, a fireplace. And on top of the fireplace, there was these old. They look like Victorian. The plates that the Victorian people used to use. Those white plates with the nice designs and whatever. So, anyways, we all sat around the table. The santero turned off all the lights, and when we do a sesión espiritual, there is a general rule. When we sit down en la mesa around the table and we put our hands down, we have to have our hands down like this, and straight on the table. No matter what happens, no one is to move from the table, okay? no matter what happens. Now, what's so interesting about this story is that I wasn't the only espiritista in la sesión. El santero was not an espiritista, but the Puerto Rican lady and the Cuban, the two other Cuban individuals were espiritistas. So we sat around the table, all the lights were off, it was dark, and we started doing our prayers, to do empezar la sesión espiritual, the spiritual seance. So halfway through la sesión, and we're all sitting on the table with our hands flat down, because we must have our hands flat down during la sesión, and there's a candle in the middle of the table, just a white candle, one of those little emergency candles, just an emergency candle. And I think there was a fuente, a goblet with water also, and of course the table was covered with a white cloth. So we're doing the prayers and all the lights were off. So we're doing the prayers, and halfway through the prayers, we heard a little noise, and it could have been the house, this just could have been the house, it's an old Victorian home, nothing really to be scared of. But what was interesting is all of a sudden the candle started flicking, and we're still in prayer and praying to God and praying to our spirit guides and praying to our santos and to our misterios and to the orisha, well, not to the orisha, but to the santos and to los guías espirituales to protect us, to protect this circle with white light, and to guide us. All of a sudden, the candle started flicking very crazily, and all of a sudden, no joke, one of the plates from the mantle fell, and it fell and crashed onto the floor. And the floor, it was like a wooden floor, and the mediums got shook up, the other guests. And I said, no, stop, please do not break this círculo, this cadena espiritual. We are here, just relax. We're protected as long as we stay in this table with our hands on la mesa, and we have this. We've said this prayer of protection. We are protected by our cuadro espiritual that forms a protective barrier around us. Again, I start saying the prayers. All of a sudden, I kid you not, one of the plates from the mantle, the fire mantle, literally flew from the mantle to the wall, and it crashed. I kid you not. And I was really upset at this moment because the three guests stood up and they ran outside. I'm like, what are you doing? You do not break the circle like that. You don't stop. What are you doing? What are you doing? Sit back down. No. They ran outside. And I looked at the santero, and he was kind of like shocked. And I'm like, I was at this moment really disgruntled, really upset. And so we went outside. And now, mind you, these are supposed to be media unidades. And we went outside and we're like, okay, why did you do that? Why did you break the circle? You're not supposed to do that. And they're like, no. Hay demonios en esa casa. There's demons in this house. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, demons? We're doing a sesión espiritual. What do you expect? We're calling on the spirits. And, I don't care what happens during una sesión espiritual. I don't care if there's an earthquake or whatever. You do not break that circle. And they were like, no, we're not going back in the house. Ahí dentro hay demonios. There's demons in that house. Hay diablitos ahí dentro. We bid them goodbye. Okay, váyanse para la mierda, So anyways, I said to the santero, listen, let's finish the prayers. Let's cleanse and purify the house. And of course, we couldn't continue the sesión because the sesión was for one of the persons who had come to the sesión. We closed it, we cleansed, we purified the house. Anyways, a week later, I contacted him and I just wanted to check up. Was everything okay? Mind you, he's a santero. He has his protection. He has his soperas de santería. I think he was also palero, so he also has his prendas. I mean, he was like, oh, I'm fine, no problem. And I was like, where do you know these people? Because any media unidad knows, any espiritista knows that once you do a sesión espiritual, you do not break that circle. That's taboo. You just don't do that. And he's like, I'm really sorry about that. So, anyways, that's just one. He apologized, and you know, that was just one funny story to me. At the moment, I was very upset, but now that I think about it, I'm like, a lot of people, they say they are what they are, but they're really not. So, that was just one story that I went through, and it was in a sesión, that I grew up. My grandmother used to do sesiones, uh, and the rule is once you sit in that table and your hands are on that table and the lights are off and you're doing the prayers, you do not break that circle. So, anyways, there's always a lesson to learn because some people are just going to run anyway. The next story that I'm going to tell you, I'm titling it El Muertero. El Muertero is it's like un necromancero. Necromancero is like a necromancer, a brujo, a sorcerer. And in Puerto Rico, when I was little, there was this gentleman, he was el brujo of el barrio. Every pueblo, every barrio has their local brujo. In our barrio, we had Don Gustavo. Now, Don Gustavo, I remember when I was a kid, if Don Gustavo was coming, I would like, oh no, I'm going the other way. Don Gustavo was like a giant to me. I swear to God, he was like a giant to me. He was an Afro Puerto Rican man. He must have been, it seemed to me like he was 6'8", but who knows, he could have been shorter. But he just seemed like, just like a big man. And he was just always a threatening looking man. Now, he lived behind my aunt's house, my tia. My aunt lived in a house where the street would kind of like go around, so that the back of her house there's the street and it would face his house. Okay, now Don Gustavo was known for his brujeria. I mean, he was el brujo mayor. He was the head honcho in this pueblo, and everyone respected him for who he was. He was no joke. He played no joke. He was always very serious. But he was also known for having made, what do you say that, pacts con demonios. I mean, these might be folklores, but this is what us little kids we would say. He made pactos with los diablos, los demonios. And I mean, this man was very powerful. So my aunt had passed away, and I had gone, to Puerto Rico, to do las novenas in Puerto Rico. When someone passes away, we watch them in the house where they lived for 3 days. Then we bury them. On the third day, we take a day of rest, a day of just, let's rest. And then we start la novena, los rosarios, we pray for that spirit so that spirit can go into the light, so that God can forgive all the trespasses and maybe any sins that this person may have committed within life, so that the soul can go into the light. So anyways, during one of these, we do them at nighttime. In Puerto Rico, these are done at night, okay? So during one of these novenas, during the novenas, there is a time when you take a moment of break. You take a moment of rest. And I remember that, okay, we stopped, and during the moment of rest, you serve chocolate, hot chocolate, and bread and all that. So I had gone outside to the back of the house, and Don Gustavo's house was in the back, and it was always never lit at night. It was just always very dark. It was just always a dark house. And so anyways, I was in the back of the house and I had a handbag. When I go to Puerto Rico, I bring a handbag and I bring my binoculars and I keep my wallet in my messenger bag. Keep my wallet, I keep my binoculars, because I like to, do a lot of sightseeing. So it was night and I was sitting outside in the back porch smoking a cigarette when I looked at, the lamppost, and on the pavement you can see the shadows of bats. Okay, and I said, "Ooh, that's pretty cool. Let me check out, the bats. Let me check out los murciélagos." And I remember I was checking out the bats, and I couldn't see it because the light was blinding me. So then I said, let me just look around with the binoculars at any random thing. When all of a sudden I came upon my mother's cat. My mother had a cat, and I don't remember the name of the cat. All Puerto Ricans, they name their cat Mishu. So I'm going to call it Mishu. So anyways, Mishu was just like walking around waiting for my mom, because my mom is in La Novena. And, he's just walking around. So I started focusing on Michu, with the binoculars, just watching him walking around. When all of a sudden I saw Michu stop, and he looked at something intently. And I'm looking at Michu. I'm like, what is he looking at? So then I'm looking to see what I can see, and I saw that his gaze was on a bush. I remember it was like a bush in front of Don Gustavo's house. Okay, so I'm looking at the bush, I didn't see nothing, and I go back to Michu. I'm like, where is Michu? And then I saw him, and I saw Michu, and all of a sudden his body arched. In that arch, the one that you would see when witches, the Halloween arch there, what the cats do. Go back to what the hell is he seeing that I can't see? All of a sudden in the bush, I saw 2 green lights. And for a moment, as I'm focused on these 2 green lights, I thought, the first instinct that I thought was, must be fireflies. Because Puerto Rico, there's bats, there's fireflies, there's even chupacabras. But that wasn't the case. But I'm looking and I'm thinking, is it fireflies? So all of a sudden, I focused back on Mishu. He had gone. He was like, I'm out of here. I'm like, okay. So then I go back to the bush, the bush thing, tree, whatever it was. And again, I see the 2 green lights. And I'm thinking, what the hell is that? Is it fireflies? Maybe it's fireflies. All of a sudden, I kid you not, they both blinked at the same time. They went on and off at the same time. They just, and what the hell? And I started like focusing more. As I'm focusing, it did it again, and my hair is coming up because I'm remembering this. And all of a sudden, one of my cousins came behind me and tapped me because we were going to start the prayers again. And I jumped. Because she tapped me behind me. I was so focused on that she tapped me and I jumped. And I said, Edie, quick, look through here and see if you can see what I see in the bushels. And she's like, I don't see nothing, mijo. Let's go inside. We got to do the prayers. I was doing the prayers. I couldn't get that out of my mind. Next morning, we wake up. It was early in the morning when all of a sudden I woke up, there was a ruckus outside. There was a scandal outside, and I had gone outside, and there, in the back of the house, where Don Gustavo lived, El Brujo Mayor, who was an Afro-Puerto Rican man of 6'8", in my mind, he could have been shorter, an Afro, dark man, and I remember he had light green eyes, which I always thought that was really mysterious about this man. There he was, Don Gustavo, hanging. I mean, he hung himself on the tree in front of his house. It was the freakiest thing I'd ever seen. And just the thought of it just today, it kind of freaks me out. And then the police came and Puerto Ricans are like all surrounding the house and I didn't want to look at that. That to me was it's an image that's etched in the brain of my mind that I can't get out of my mind, just to see this strong man hanging there. And as the stories went out through the day, that he was a brujo, that he was a muertero, that he had made pactos con el diablo, que él tenía demonios, that he had demons and all that. And I started remembering the blinking eyes, that I had thought were fireflies, but it was weird how in that bushel, I want to call it a bushel, it was like a plant, and I can't remember what kind of plant it was. It was like a round plant, and inside the plant, I saw those two things that I could have swore were fireflies, but when they blinked, it was like they closed and then they opened, and I looked again and they did it again. What the hell is that? I always wondered to this day, was it un demonio? Was it uno de los demonios o uno de los diablitos that had come to cobrar all the years of la brujería y la magia negra de Don Gustavo? To this day, I don't know, and I'll never forget that, and that's just another part of just who I am. It's just something that I remember. So the next story that I'm going to tell you is another personal story, and I'm titling this one El Cuco. Now, if you're from Puerto Rico, Cuba, Mexico, all Latin America, you know El Cuco. Spain, you know El Cuco. It's universal in all Latin American countries. And the closest equivalent to El Cuco in American folklore or American stories is the boogeyman, okay? So I'm going to title this El Cuco. I have a friend, still my friend. We've been friends since we were in high school. His name is Sean, and this is dedicated to you, Sean, if you're watching this video. He's an Irishman, but let me tell you something. Sean can speak Spanish better than a lot of Boricuas. He was raised in a Puerto Rican neighborhood here in Massachusetts, so he can hold on a Spanish conversation with Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, everybody, because he can speak Spanish very well. So me and Sean were friends from the time we started high school, 14, and we're still friends to this day, okay? Now, he had always wanted to go to Puerto Rico. He's like, when we graduate from high school, let's take a trip to Puerto Rico, celebrate and blah, blah, blah. I said, all right, let's go to Puerto Rico. And, and I'll show you mi Isla Bella, my beautiful island. Now, everybody who knows Puerto Rico knows that Puerto Rico is a very paranormal island. There are tours dedicated for just tours on paranormal and the metaphysical. You can go online and you can Google it. And Puerto Rico is the whole island is un portal. It's a portal in between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. So every corner of the island, there is spiritual activity, okay? And yes, if you want to take a tour, you can look it up online and write Haunted Puerto Rico and you'll find it. There's tours. Or you can find somewhere and go and do it cheaper. Trust me, you can. But anyways, so we had gone to Puerto Rico. We had graduated high school, and we took I think it was a 10-day trip to Puerto Rico. Now, I had taken him all over the island. I had taken him to El Morro. I had taken him to El Yunque, to Camuy Caves, to the Caguana Taino ceremonial parks. We went to Ponce, the Phosphorescent Bay. We just had a great time. And I remember that he fell in love with the coquis. If you go to Puerto Rico, the coquis are the tree frogs that only exist in Puerto Rico. And when you go to sleep every night, that's all you hear all night long is los coquis. And just when the coquis stop, they quiet down, all of a sudden you start hearing the roosters. If you live within the rural areas, which is where I'm from in Puerto Rico. It's a rural area. So on our last trip, our last day of the island, we had gone to San Juan. And, we just took, every day we were like two gypsies, two gitanos. We would wake up and go. We would take the bus and we'd just go all over the island. And then usually someone would pick us up in El Pueblo and bring us home. One of our cousins, somebody. Or we would take El Público. El Público is a bus. We would take a bus from San Juan to Comerío, and from Comerío we would take, someone would pick us up, or we would take one of the last bus to my town, to my little barrio. Okay, so on our last trip, I remember we were having a great time in San Juan. It was really fun. We were having a good old time. And I'm like, okay, Sean, we got to get back because we're going to get to Comerío very late. And then we're not going to find someone to give us a ride to El Pueblito from Comerío. So then we're going to have to walk it. And he's like, all right, let's go. So it was around 5, or I don't remember what time it was. But we had gone from San Juan, we had gotten to Comerío. It was already getting late. I'm like, oh, Jesus, I hope we get a bus, un público, from Comerío to El Pueblito. Sadly to say, we couldn't. And, no one was there that we knew. I'm like, okay, Sean, we're going to have to take the trek. We're going to have to make this trek up the mountain, from the Pueblo, up the mountain, and down the mountain, and over this valley, and through the hills, and through the woods, and up the rivers, and whatever it was. And we got to go through this quick. Okay, because after that, we're going to come to this section that leads from the Pueblo of Comerío to the little town that we lived in. There's this stretch. There was at the time, now it's well lit, but at the time there was a stretch of mile of land that was enquilted with trees all the way. And there was no lights. Now this place was known, se me para los pelos, this place, at night, or when the sun went down, it was pitch black. I'm telling you, it was pitch black. Now they have lights. Last time I went there, they had lights. But we're like, okay, we gotta get through here quick, because this certain section, there has been a lot of murders. A lot of people have been murdered, and there have been stories that El Cuco resided in this stretch of land. And if you ever got caught driving alone through this section, or walking alone, which nobody really walked alone except two crazy loco Americanos like me and Sean, no one walked it, and when they drive it, they usually drive it with other people. This is very dark. So we couldn't get a ride. We had got to Comerío. We were like, oh my God. All right, so let's just try to get to Riondo. So we're in this stretch of 1 mile land, and it's getting dark quick. And I'm like, Sean, we just got to hurry up. We have got to make it to El Pueblito. We just got to get to, the safety ground. And it's getting darker, and we're like, okay, hurry up. This is not a safe place to be. We just got to hurry up and go. And if we hear something behind us, walk faster. If it gets closer, then we turn around, we'll face it. Whatever it may be, lo que sea, lo que Dios mande. Gracias a Dios, we made it to the bridge of the Pueblito where my family resided. And then all of a sudden you see the houses, and behind you, you see that long stretch of mile of dirt road at the time. It was paved, but let's call it a dirt road. But we had made it, and we had to pass this little bridge in order to get to the Pueblito. And I'm like, okay, I can breathe, because El Cuco doesn't pass through bridges, one, and he doesn't pass through waters. Cool, we're safe. We got to my aunt's house. We were playing bricas. It was our last trip. And then Sean had a bright idea. He's like, you know what I want to do? I want to record los coquis. I wanna have the coqui frogs. Now, this is one of my other aunts. I have 3 aunts, and they've all passed away. May they all rest in peace. This aunt, she had a house, a really beautiful house, and in the back of her house, there was a porch all the way around the house, una veranda, all the way around the house. In the front, the guests would have coffee, whatever, and in the back, she had her washing machine. She had a little table and couches where, you would play cards and you would just unwind from the day and just talk. My aunt at the time was 60, and her husband was 65, and so they had gone to bed early. And we were playing cards, me and Sean. When Sean had this idea, I want to record the cookies. I want to hear. I just want to bring that to the United States, a little part of Puerto Rico with me. I said, all right. So we had a tape recorder, and I don't remember how long the tape was. I think it was this is going to sound like a dinosaur. Remember those tapes in the 80s? They were like 120 minutes. So I think it was 60 minutes on each side, I think it was. So he popped in a tape at the end of the night when we were done playing games, and he pressed record, and we jetted inside to go to sleep, because the next day we're going back to the United States. Fine. Next day, picks up the tape, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We go, take our plane, go back home to the United States. We were in the United States, we're back in Massachusetts, when Sean said, I want to hear the tape. I want to hear the cookies. I want to remember Puerto Rico and blah, blah, blah. And let's talk about Puerto Rico, and I want to hear this tape with the cookies. I said, all right, that's cool. So he puts on the tape, and I don't know, we had something to eat. I don't know. My mom made some food and whatever. So we're eating, and he puts on the tape, and we're listening to the tree frogs, and it's very quiet. All you hear is just the tree frogs. We must have been all sleeping at the time. And in the back of my aunt's house, like I said, it's just dark woods, just dark woods. It was farmland. So her house was here, and then in the back was all wooded area. Okay. Now this is not the same aunt as the one as Don Gustavo. This is my other aunt. So in the middle of the tape, we're hearing the cookies. You hear the cookies, cookie. And all of a sudden, you hear a dog. I remember you could hear a dog barking in the background. Nothing, no big deal. It's just a dog. All of a sudden, you hear the dog whimper. Like it made this whimper. What the hell? No big deal. Maybe someone told her to shut up. I don't know. Le tiró un zapato, who knows? And all of a sudden, after the dog quieted down, you hear this kind of like vibration in the tape, and it was like, what's that? Okay, so we're listening to the tape. What the hell is that? And all of a sudden you hear footsteps. It was like a slow footstep, and it was in the distance, but it was coming closer to the tape recorder. And so it was coming to the recorder, the tape recorder. And all of a sudden you can hear a slow breathing. And I'm like, Sean, what the hell is that? And I'm like, Sean, did you do that? And he's like, no, dude, I didn't do that. Did you do that, Louis? Yo te lo juro por Dios, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. So we're listening to this breathing. Oh, wow, what's that? All of a sudden it stopped breathing, and then you can hear the footsteps go back away from the tape, and then you can still hear you didn't hear the tape. It was funny because you didn't hear the cookies while it was breathing, but you can hear the steps move away, and then all of a sudden you start hearing the tree frogs again, the cookies. We never knew what it was. We don't know what the hell it was. Was it that El Cuco followed us? You know what I'm saying? God protect us that it didn't, because I'm still here. We never knew what that was. And my friend Sean still has that tape. We were 17, 27, 37, almost 20 something years. He still has that tape. And sometimes we listen to it and we're like, did the Cuco follow us? ¿Sería que el Cuco nos persiguió? Did he actually cross that bridge and follow us and try to mess with us that one last final night in Puerto Rico? So the final story that I'm going to tell you tonight is titled El Diablito. Okay, and this is a title that I just came up with. If you're Puerto Rican, 40, I would say 30 to 40 and above, you were raised, and if you've gone to Puerto Rico or you lived in Puerto Rico, you know that one of the nightly pastimes, one of the favorite nightly pastimes, is the family gathering outside in the porch, having their medianoches, which is a sandwich, or their jibarito, which is another sandwich, with their chocolate, and they would tell their stories of times long ago, their romances, and also their ghost stories. Puerto Ricans, I don't care what religion, I don't care what spirituality, I don't care what it is, we all believe in the world of spirits. Either you believe it or you don't, but you respect it. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So Puerto Ricans love their ghost stories. And I remember one night, it was late, and my uncle had to go, work early, and he was very tired from the day's work, and he had gone to bed early. So me and his two sons, we had stayed up, and we were just talking about, of course, ghost stories, because that's something that kids, teenagers like to do. Now we sat outside, and my uncle, mi tío, he had a house that was on top of a hill that would go down. It was like on top of the hill, and it would go all the way down. And there was a couple houses, on either side of this hill. And then at the end of the hill, there was a church. Now, mind you, across the street from the church was a cantina. A cantina is like a bar. And in front of the la cantina, there was like a little parking, And it was late at night. It must have been one of the weekdays, because if it was a weekend, that would have been full of all the gentlemen having their beers or their cervezas or whatever. So it must have been a day of the week. And I remember we were up, and we were teenagers. Now, at the time, and I'm going to name this other cousin Pedrito, because I don't have any cousins that name. And so I'm sure if he hears this story, he's probably going to kick my ass, you know what I'm saying? But I'm going to name him Pedrito, okay? Pedrito was much older than us. And Pedrito suffered from very young that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde syndrome, where one moment he could be cool and the next moment se le metía el diablo. I mean, it was like he would get possessed by the devil. And you just didn't mess with Pedrito. And he would always tell us, he was in his mid-20s at the time, maybe late 20s, and we were in our mid-teens, probably a little bit younger, 15, 16 years old. And he would always say, yo veo el diablo, don't mess with me, because I can see, yo veo el diablo, se me trepa el diablo. And he would always talk about the devil. Yo veo el diablo, don't mess with me, el diablo se me mete, se me monta. And he would always do that, and we didn't mess with Pedrito. Leave him over there, you know what I'm saying? So one night, we were on the porch, just chilling, and I don't know what we were talking about. I'm sure we were talking about our little ghost stories, because it's a Puerto Rican pastime. At night, when we sit on the porch, we talk about our life in the day, and of course, ghost stories always seem to make it into the story. So we're talking about, I don't know what we were talking about, and all of a sudden, we hear a car coming, and we notice it was our cousin Pedrito's. I think it was a buggy. He had a buggy at the time. It was a buggy or Jeep or something like that. It was a Jeep. He had a Jeep, and he was in the passenger side, and he was coming down the hill. So we saw him, driving the Jeep, and he's cussing at the passenger seat. And you can see, pa'l carajo, no me joda la vida, váyase pa'l carajo, que se joda. And he's trying que se joda pa'l carajo. And we're like, who's he yelling at? Who's he fighting with? So he goes down the hill, and he takes the corner towards the church, and he disappears. All right, let's ignore him. He's going through his Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde syndrome. It's one of those nights. Leave him alone. My family just left him alone when cuando se le metía el diablo, as we would call it, as the family would say. Se le metió el diablo, leave him alone. Again, we're talking about our stories. I don't know what it was. All of a sudden, again, here comes my cousin. He's coming down the hill. We must have gone all the way from the church, all the way around the pueblito, and then all of a sudden he's coming down the hill again, and he's driving, and he's still arguing. Now, mind you, this is a time before cell phones. So, no, there's no cell phone. He's not talking on the phone, and he's just driving. Y para el carajo, váyase para el infierno, blah, 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 blah. And we're like, oh, wow, what's the matter with Pedrito? You know, se metió el diablo. You know, that's what we used to always say. And all of a sudden, he stopped by the church, just dead stop. His Jeep, dead stop. And we're like, oh, okay. And we're on the porch and we're just watching him. And then he pulls into the cantina, into the bar. And he gets out of the car and he starts throwing fists like he's fighting somebody. You know, he's like fighting somebody. But there was nobody there. And we're like, oh, ¿qué le pasa a Pedrito? What's the matter with Pedrito? And he's like, váyase pa'l carajo, váyase pa'l infierno, váyase pa'l carajo, váyase pa'l infierno. And he's throwing punches in the air. And we're like, wow, he must be on some serious drugs. You know what I'm saying? That's the first thing we thought. It's like, homeboy must have taken out. He smoked some serious marijuana or whatever, because that's all he did. He liked his weed. So I was like, wow, what was that laced with, you know? Váyase pa'l carajo. And he's throwing, you know, punches in the air, and he's fighting with himself. And it looked like he was fighting with his own shadow. And we're like, oh, wow, should we wake up Tio? You know what I'm saying? Because Tio is his elder, and he can calm him down. Our uncle, which is his uncle, can calm him down. And one of my cousins like, nah, just leave him alone. He's gonna get back into his car and he'll go home. So we're just watching him. All of a sudden, he goes into the car, goes into the Jeep, and he drives the cantina. He backs up from the cantina and goes towards the church and back around. Cool, no problem. All of a sudden, we're just chilling. When all of a sudden, it must have turned around from the church, and we see that he's no longer on the driver's side. He's on the passenger side, but the Jeep is still driving. And he's like, váyase pa'l carajo, usted no me puede joder la vida, váyase pa'l carajo, tú eres un demonio, tú eres un diablo. And he stopped. I mean, the Jeep stopped right in front of the cantina, the bar, la barra. But the way you could see it, you could see the lights, and it was the back of the Jeep was towards us. And you can physically see that he was on the passenger side this time, but there was nobody or nothing on the driver's side, unless he picked up one of his little midget friends, you know, because you got to come up with an explanation for everything. But there was nothing there. And you can see him, he's like yelling at the driver's seat now, you know, because he wasn't in the driver's seat no more. He was in the passenger's side. And we were like, oh, wow, what's that? You know, we were like in shock. ¿Qué diablo es esto? And again, the Jeep turns on. Something is driving the car, and it wasn't my cousin, you know. Goes around the church and goes back towards the direction towards where he lived, because the church is around here, and he lives behind the hill. You know, that freaked us out so much that we grew the cojones. To say, let's go take a walk. You know, say it's our cousin. He's our primo, you know, he won't hurt us. Let's grow some cojones and let's go to Tia's house and see if he got to the house. Let me tell you something. The pueblito was dark. Everyone was sleeping. It must have been midnight at this time. And we got to my aunt's house, and there was his Jeep. And he wasn't in the Jeep. So we sneak into my aunt's house, to the side of the house, to check, where his room is. In Puerto Rico, the windows at the time, I'm sure some of them are still made of that metal that protects, the windows from hurricane season. So it's like a metal, it's like a white metal that kind of opens like that. So we sneak towards where his room was, and we look in, and he's sleeping, and he's snoring. He's like, he was like a deep snore, a deep, deep, deep sleep. We just booked it. We booked it home. We booked it back to my uncle's house. We never knew what was on the passenger side. Was it El Diablito de él? Lord only knows. All we know is every time he went from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde, he would go all crazy and he would say, me van a sacar el diablo, me van a sacar el diablo. And when he did that, nobody messed with him. And this was a long time ago, but thankfully, Pedrito is now a married man. He has his children. He's a grandfather now. He's much calmer. He's a very good man. Lord knows what he was going through in that stage. And sometimes I want to ask him, and I want to say, Pedrito, we saw that. It's just something that I just never, bring up. There's certain things that you can bring up to Pedrito because, he's calmer now, but he's always still got that genio about him. He's a big guy. So he's always got that genio about him, that attitude, so, you just drop it. So anyways, that's just one more last story that I wanted to share tonight with you. And I hope you like the videos. If you do like the stories, if you did, please let me know that you like them, and I'll probably do some more in the future. Because like I said, I can feel a book. And these are not as scary as some of the other stories that I've been through. But I hope you liked the video. I'm mumbling, so I'm just going to end it right now. And please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Please leave a comment down below of one of your stories. And much love, much respect. This is Sancista Brujo Luis. Santo Sanse.